Hi everyone, welcome to this week's episode of How to HR. I'm your host, Kristy-Lee. It's fabulous to have you with us here this week on our regular video series, How to HR. If you're new to this series, welcome. It's really great to have you here. And for our regular watchers, welcome back. I hope you're having a fabulous week and I hope you're going to enjoy today's episode of this video series. If this is all new to you, this is a weekly video series that we run live here every week inside our Facebook group as well as on our YouTube channel, where we give you a tip, a strategy, a piece of advice that's going to help when it comes to building, managing, leading, and leveraging the people in your business. Because one thing we know to be true is this: you cannot build a business that delivers you as the business owner, as the leader, as the manager, all the success that you desire, and any sense of freedom without having a team. And not just any team, we're talking about having the right team, by having a winning team in your business, by having the right people in the roles at the right time. Having that team is critical to not only driving success, which is really important, but also to make sure that you are not the one doing all the things, working all the hours, and never able to take a break from your business. So each week here on this series, we just aim to give you a little snippet, something really easy to digest and implement straight into your business that's going to help move forward when it comes to your team. And today's topic is an interesting one. And I tell you what, I have spoken about this topic over so many years that it just keeps popping up. And it is this: how to avoid indecision when it comes to your recruitment decisions. I recall a time, probably was more than 10 years ago now, where a client contacted us. Our consulting team within our business, our recruitment consultants, were working on a project with this client, and they had gone through the whole, process, presented the applicants, and the client Joe contacted me and said, "You've presented such good candidates, I actually can't choose between the top two. So for right now, I'm actually not going to hire anyone." He literally couldn't make the decision between the two candidates, and he thought whichever way he went, he was always going to regret not hiring the other, and ultimately hired neither applicant, despite admitting that both were perfect for the role. Now, I don't know about you, but when he got me with that piece of information, I was a little stunned and I thought it was ludicrous. I just couldn't wrap my head around it. But that was his decision, and ultimately he left a gap in his business because he couldn't make a decision. Now, both were really strong applicants, and my team were pretty proud of themselves, rightly so, that they had done such a great job that they'd made this difficult for him. And it was a little badge of honour in the office that if you made that decision difficult for a client, it means you'd done a really good job. And sure, they had. But I kind of dug a little deeper here because I was really curious to know what was at play. And the ultimate issue is, if you can't make a clear decision, there's a few things going wrong. But the fallout, and we can work through those things, but the fallout is you're going to put your business at risk. Now, obviously in Joe's case, he had a risk because he was without someone in the role for a period of time. That's the obvious and immediate risk. But there's a whole lot more risk wrapped around this inability for us as business owners to make clear, concise, strong and good decisions when it comes to who to bring into our teams. Now, I get it. Deciding who to bring into your business is a big decision. And if you've had a disastrous experience in the past where you've hired the wrong person, you tend to put even more pressure on yourself around making that decision. You sometimes second guess yourself because you've got it wrong before. And you put a lot of weight, a lot of pressure on this decision being right. And I get it, because it's a big deal. When it's gone wrong before, you know that experience and you don't want to go back through that again. We know how long it takes to find a new employee. We know the cost associated. Don't forget, we're talking no less than a third of the annual salary every time you need to refill a position. So I totally get why we all put pressure on getting that decision right. However, we then sometimes put ourselves in this situation of analysis paralysis where, like my friend Joe, we didn't make a decision, or we can't make a decision. We can't move forward with that. And the risks are huge, absolutely. I mean, obviously you've got the risk of who's going to get the work done now. You run the risk of the candidates going through the process with you when they see you unable to make a decision or unable to move forward. Even if they're unsuccessful, they want a clear decision. So you run a risk of your business reputation being damaged with the applicants that might be considering applying with you in the future, because that applicant pool hasn't had a great experience. You run the risk of course, the loss of productivity of not having someone in the role. That's a pretty straightforward one. You run the risk of really losing confidence with your team. Your team get frustrated because they want some help. They're usually the ones picking up the slack when there's a gap in the business, and you failing to make that decision for them as to who you're going to bring in to help them can really make them become quite frustrated. And what does that lead to? That leads to disengagement, that leads to lower productivity. Ultimately, this all results to a hit in profitability in your business. It all hits the bottom line at some point. So there's a whole range of risks associated with this indecision. Yet I find it really interesting that quite commonly, and I've spoken before here on How to HR, that at the moment we seem to be in a season of lots of businesses hiring and recruiting staff, either to replace individuals or in newly created roles. So there has been a lot of activity in the market. And the businesses that can make clear and concise decisions will win the war when it comes to getting the top talent into the business. There are many locations and many industries where the pool for talent is really tough. We are talent poor in many cases. If you've had to hire a tradie in your business recently, you will 1,000% know what I'm talking about, because there are not anywhere near enough skilled and qualified tradies to go around in any trade. If you've tried to hire an accountant into a chartered accounting firm in the last 10 years, you will know that that is no easy feat. And if you're looking for a specialist in any industry, they are always tough to come by. And for some of you, you'll be geographically located where there's less talent around. So dilly-daddling on your recruitment decisions is going to cost you top talent. They will take a job with someone else, no doubt. So how can we avoid this indecision when it comes to our recruitment? I'm going to give you 5 of my top tips to avoid indecision in your recruitment process. You might need all 5, but maybe one of them is a real penny drop moment for you and you realize that that's going to help you along. The first one, and one that I talk about so regularly, is you must have clarity about what you are looking for before you even start this recruitment campaign. You may have heard me talk about an exercise that I recommend you do called the clean slate exercise, where you map out what your ideal company structure looks like and really fill in the gaps as to what these positions involve. Have your position description written before you go to market. Be crystal clear on what are the must-have criteria for this applicant, what are the nice-to-have criteria, and what are the deal breakers. You want to be really clear on all of that before you even start looking for someone, because if you're in a situation where you might get hundreds of resumes, some of you would think, oh, lucky them, but that's also very difficult. If you're not clear, you're not going to shortlist well, which is going to bring you to my second tip in a moment. But if you're also not clear and you only get a handful of applicants, you tend to start to compensate. And you'll say things to yourself like, well, I don't have everything I need, but what else do I do? There's not enough applicants. Or you get muddied in terms of what was actually really important in the role. And that's when it can become paralyzing in trying to make the decision, because your gut feels telling you that this isn't right, but you can't figure out why. So the first tip is to get crystal clear, have total clarity about what you're looking for in this position. My second tip is to shortlist well. If you don't shortlist the right applicants to interview, you're going to end up with the wrong interview pool, and that's going to make your recruitment decision super hard and you won't be able to figure out why, but it's because you're not interviewing the right people. If you shortlist well, you'll have the right people in the interview pool. Now, I've shared with you here before a strategy that I call screening resumes like a ninja, where I teach you how to screen resumes in less than a minute. It is something that does require you to take your people-pleasing hat off and put a cynical hat on and look very objectively at very specific parts of the resume only. No reading cover letters, no reading the full background, looking for very specific things. And those specific things are what I just mentioned: the must-have criteria, the deal breakers, and then ultimately the nice-to-have criteria if you need to. If you shortlist well and you're really clear about that shortlisting process, you will have the right people to interview. So my second tip is to shortlist well. My third tip is to get curious at your interviews. The quality of the answers you're going to get at interviews will be determined by the quality of the questions you ask. For every question you are going to ask at interview, I want you to ask yourself before why you're asking that question and what information you are hoping to get out of it. There is no point asking an interview question just because you think that someone suggested it's a good interview question if you don't understand the value of it. You have to ask questions that you know what you're trying to get out of the answers from that question. You want to ask open-ended questions that elicit longer responses, and you want to get curious. If you do not approach the interview process with absolute curiosity, you're not going to dig deeper when you need to. You're not going to hear those little nuances in the answer. You're not going to see the red flags when they present themselves, and you're not going to get a full picture of what this applicant was like. So my third tip is to get curious and ask the right interview questions. My fourth tip, and this could in fact be the most important one, check for values alignment. I don't care how technically brilliant this applicant is, and I know that can be a massive draw card for many of you, particularly in candidate short markets. If there is not a values alignment, mark my words, you are heading for a recruitment disaster. They might last 3 months, they might last 6 months, but they are not a good long-term fit for your business. So make sure you're checking for values alignment, and that could be part of your interview questions. There's a whole range of ways you can do it. You want to check for values alignment, and if it's not there, this is not the person for you. And my last tip, my fifth tip, is consider having a buddy in your recruitment process. If you're overwhelmed by having to make this decision on your own and you're feeling like the weight of the world is on the shoulder, not on your shoulders, get some help. This could be by way of someone else in your business, perhaps your business partner, perhaps your most trusted employee, perhaps the person that's going to be working most closely with this new person, perhaps the team leader. Maybe get a business advisor in to help. Maybe it's a HR consultant, or maybe it's someone else. Maybe your accountant gets involved. But get a buddy to help rationalize the process, to talk through, someone that can objectively also have said, yes, I heard that person say that, or did you miss this part of the interview? They might just help you to bounce your own ideas around somewhere other than your own head and help you get that clarity to make the right decisions. Now, if you're not doing the recruitment on your own and you do have other people involved and the chatter amongst that is getting overwhelming, the other thing you might need to do is ditch that buddy. If they're not helping you make clear decisions and this is your business and ultimately your responsibility who you hire, then get rid of the other people involved unless they are helping in the process. So my fifth tip is to either get a buddy or ditch a buddy in your recruitment process. Ultimately, when it comes to finding people for our team, I urge you to trust your gut. Your gut feel is really powerful. If it's telling you that something's not quite right, or that you need to dig a little deeper, or that this is just not the right person, don't hire them. Trust your gut instinct. But don't sit on the fence of indecision like my friend Joe. Don't hire no one because you can't make a decision. If you use these 5 tips, a candidate will stand out as the front runner. No doubt about it. So let's recap. What are my 5 top tips for avoiding indecision when it comes to recruitment? Clarity. Get crystal clear on what you are looking for before you start the process. Shortlist. Shortlist well and objectively to make sure you have the right pool of applicants to interview. When you do get to the interview stage, I want you to focus on getting curious and asking great interview questions that really lead to answers that you need to know from this applicant. Number 4, ensure the values alignment. If it's not there, they're not right for your business. And number 5, either get a buddy to help you or ditch a buddy if they're confusing you. Maybe all 5 of those things are for you. Maybe 1 or 2 is going to be a real game changer. But don't get indecisive with your recruitment. You don't have the time, nor does your team need that from you. You've got to make the right decision, absolutely. But not making any decision is the worst thing you can do. Now, that is it for us on How to HR today. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you have a topic or a question you would like me to cover in a future episode of How to HR, which is always on a Thursday here inside Facebook, then please let me know. Just pop the comment in the video under the video below, or send us a direct message and say, hey, I'd love you to cover this topic, or I'd like to learn more about anything to do with your team. You let us know, and I will be more than happy to cover that on a future episode for you. That's it from me for today, though. Have a fabulous week, and I'll be back next Thursday with episode 19 of How to HR. Take care.